I'm Sanjay Agarwal. This is not the introduction. I'm the founder of Blue Meteor. We are a native cloud PIM company. And prior to this, I was the founder and CEO of Codified, a company that spent 22 years just working on product information. So that's all we did, working with industrial distributors, manufacturers, and what have you. So coming into the world of Blue Meteor, we came in with like a deep sense of the problems and the issues that companies face when they're dealing with the world of product information, right? Does everybody here know what a PIM is? As I start out here, pretty much. Okay, just for people who may not exactly. Oh, let's get leveled up on the definition of a PIM, right? And besides all the words up there, there's a very basic concept, right? All of you transact in products, right? Everybody sells products. Therefore, the entire information supply chain in your company is about product information, right? Whether it's putting it up on a website for e-commerce, whether it's your ERP, it's your procurement system, it's your inventory management system, the singular record that needs to exist is product information, right? And it's an extremely painful business, and I'm sure you all agree, with managing and maintaining product information. And as a distributor, you have two challenges. One, you have to take all of the data that comes from the suppliers that actually doesn't sync, put it into a singular format, and run your business with it. Fair enough? That's the problem I've been engaged in solving for the last 22 years, previously as a professional services company and now as a software company. And the biggest challenge for us as a professional services company, when you have hundreds of people in my company working for distributors and manufacturers, is it's all manual labor, right? It's all brute forcing it. So we spend a huge amount of time and energy in automating. And this will kind of connect to the presentation. I'm setting it up. And how did we automate things in the past? We wrote little snippets of code. We built algorithms. We went into something called machine learning. So we kept trying, but still it was 80% brute force and 20% technology. And you could change the mix. And if you wanted to change the mix, you have to get a bunch of developers in, right? I've solved 20% of the problem about automation. I want to do more. I need to have developers do it. That's the world we were in until 6 months to a year ago, right? Now, AI has been there for a while. The usage and applicability of it was exploding, right? That's where we're at today, and that's why we are spending the entire day today on talking about AI for distributors. And I'll just focus right now just on the portion. So we talked about it for a second, but PIM, people tend to think about PIM as very often when we're talking to people, they're thinking about the e-commerce website.
Yeah.
How do I create the best experience on the e-commerce website so I can sell it, right? And that's absolutely a critical component of the functionality it serves, but it touches all of your digital supply chain as we just talked about, right? So it's absolutely critical to have control over that data, right? This to me is what was our discovery, what our thought process, having been doing this for 22 years. Very often in all our industries, there are boxes that are made, right? So we have a box definition for what a PIM is. PIM is somewhere where you store data, and then you connect that data to your other applications. That's been the traditional definition. What does that make it? It makes it a back office system. What does that do in the organization? It doesn't get the attention it needs, right? It doesn't get the investment it needs, even though it is the most critical component that makes everything work. What we believe is that PIM, we're redefining it. It's what's an active PIM that serves the end business purpose. What's your end business purpose? Drive more sales, drive profitability. And what does that mean? Your PIM needs to be actively talking to all of the other systems, taking in data and delivering intelligence. And that's how I'm connecting all these dots to artificial intelligence, right? So we fundamentally believe that the PIM as it has existed for about 22, 23 years is going to be unrecognizable in the future as you guys continue on the journey. So you've heard a lot about AI, and I'm not going to try and define what AI is and what the path of AI is. You heard from Zach this morning, and that's probably very dangerous territory for me to step into. But I will say this. As an average user, I call myself an average user who gets on the computer and goes to Bard or ChatGPT and asks a question. That's what we do. We query something and try to get intelligent answers. That's what's called generative AI, right? It's generating new content and new images and new things based on what it has learned through large language models. But as an average user, our experience is asking questions and getting answers. Fair? If somebody here is a deep computer scientist, they're probably doing something more, right? The way I define it in English language is AI doesn't do anything today for us in this room, right? Even if I was to take a software product, and I'm sure you have developers doing this, or there are different people now, it's not developers, what they are doing in your application, asking ChatGPT a question and plugging the answer back into your software, right? And that's what generative AI is. And that's where the next step is, where there will be actual native AI applications that are not based on humans querying and getting an answer back and plugging it into your software. And that obviously has huge implications for something like product content, which is a complex problem. And that's what makes it pretty exciting and scary and challenging at the same time on what it's going to look like as we go forward. And I'm going to skip this slide, but essentially you guys have heard all about this today in different ways and forms, especially with Zach. I want to just quickly jump into it. We only have 20 minutes. The interesting thing about all of us humanity is that the problems don't change, the solutions keep becoming better, right? So over time, the questions, you ask anybody about your business, what are you trying to do? You're trying to drive sales, you're trying to have your customers be happy, and have a healthy bottom line, right? That's not going to change, ever, right? Unless you're not for profit, sorry. For-profit businesses. So essentially, it's a rather big simplification of what key issues for distributors are. But from a PIM perspective, the problem is that you have hundreds, sometimes thousands, sometimes 50 suppliers sending you a whole bunch of stuff, and your end customer, which could be a procurement system, it could be e-commerce system, is expecting consistent data. And if you can get that right, you take out a huge amount of friction from your business, right? Or by the way, a lot of companies choose not to look into it only because it has been classified as a back office system, and therefore it affects business results. So again, I keep talking about cost and revenue, right? That's what everything is about. Okay? There was a famous Harvard business. There's a famous quote what they don't teach you in Harvard Business School: business is revenue minus expenses. So we just talk about revenue minus expenses here, right? So these are all of the places where companies spend enormous amount of time and money trying to get their data right. And that's about saving costs, right? How do I bring in all these items from suppliers and classify them? How do I create taxonomies? I don't like the word taxonomy. Let's think about it as a merchandising behavior. How do you merchandise your products, right? How do you make all of those decisions effectively? And that's what AI can influence. Every single line item here is something that we know can be solved, and we're working on solving. So these are not hypotheticals, right? And that dramatically changes. We know, without naming companies, distributors north of $5 billion, actually much bigger than that, where the time to market for an NPI used to be 6 months. It's been cut down to a day. Now, not from, I'm not going to make it sound like the internal legal processes and logisticals have gone away, but just from the supplier's information coming in and getting up on the website. You can crash that time down by leveraging technology. And we'll talk a bit about what the magic is and what the flaw in the magic is at this point in time and how it's going to change. But there is huge advantages that are coming in terms of cost savings as you use a PIM. PIM, remember, right now is primarily a manual process flow tool. That's what it is. There is very little automation in those PIMs that you have known at least for the last 20 years. So we went from the expenses side, which is saying you can significantly reduce costs and shorten time to market. Shorten time to market is a revenue number. But here's what we think the world is going to is dynamic PIM. I'm selling it to a customer in a particular area of the United States. I know who that customer is. I don't. My technology does. How can I hyper-personalize the experience? Everything from pricing to how I describe the product. My user is a construction worker versus a procurement person who runs a factory. These are all different personas. They shop differently. Right now, we offer them one experience. And that changes on its head once you bring in AI and making it a dynamic PIM. So across these words that we've used, when we talk about dynamic pricing, optimized basket of goods, essentially if you're a large customer and you're selling $5 million worth of product, could you replace a whole bunch of product with exact equivalents, improve your margins, and reduce the cost to your supplier? Yes, you can. That takes a bunch of computing power, right? It takes clean, usable data and then a bunch of computing power. And all of these things, whether it's cross-sell, upsell, I talked about personalized customer interaction, all of these things will see, well, the guys will stay ahead of the game. And we'll talk about the challenge of staying ahead of the game or joining the game. And that's a big challenge. I think all of you are here to the extent I'm here to figure out, okay, what's next? What can I practically do as a next step? Right? I mean, that's the challenge. But all of these things, for the people who invest and stay ahead of the game, you will see a dramatic change in the business, not an incremental change in the business, it will be a dramatic change in the business. So here is the big danger I see of my presenting here and of any speaker who spoke here. I love these two statements. I always go back and refer to them. For those who haven't heard of it, this was Tom Watson, the president of IBM in 1943. And he said, I think there's a world market for about maybe 5 computers. Okay. And Steve Ballmer was made fun of. He's doing very well, of course. Steve Ballmer, for those of you who are not familiar, was one of the founders of Microsoft along with Bill Gates. Eventually ran Microsoft, and Bill Gates became the chairman, and eventually Bill Gates retired. And he laughed at the iPhone when it was launched. And he said, we're selling millions of these products, they'll never make it. Standing here and talking about AI and trying to say this is what the future is, the probabilities are 90% wrong. So we can focus on the 10%, how as a company now, how we think about the world, and how do we make sure that the 10% that we write about has great value, right? It also connects the challenge for you in what's the things that you do in your business and we write about it, right? Because the pace at which, and whoever heard from Zach this morning, at which AI is going to change is far greater than what happened when the first smartphone was launched or when the internet came about. This is moving much faster, right? So I'm not in the prediction business. I'm in the business of finding pragmatic solutions to real-world problems using the latest technology. Okay, so this is a bit of the how, right? This is the approach we take on how do you take this really fast-moving world and not sit in the corner waiting for it to get perfect, or getting it to a point where you can feel confident. And there are huge risks, right? And I'll talk about that in a second here when I show you some examples. So we all know there's trillions of dollars worth of benefit that will accrue to the human race. Getting into the game, we believe the smart way to do it is act fast, act on the known, right? Act on what we know are practical, viable solutions, and make sure that you have enough governance built in. In context of product information management in itself, the win is in being the smartest organization. I would say we focus on that, is working on prompts. So we develop large libraries of prompts because that's what drives, whether it's Bard or Anthropic AI or it's ChatGPT, right? And by the way, there's smarter things happening now. You ask Bard to write prompts for ChatGPT, and then the two of them talk to each other and figure out the best answer. So lots of ways you can play the game, but the bottom line is, we have told our data scientists that you almost have to forget a lot of things you know in data science and become the smartest people on how to interact with these technologies, right? The second part, which is very interesting, and I missed talking about this, and I do want to mention this, is context, right? Here is an example. This is back in the day when we were doing services, right? What's the difference between buying online, a hammer, and walking to True Value or one of the local hardware stores? You can go up to the person and say, "This is my problem. What should I buy?" Right? What does that need? That doesn't need product information. That doesn't need to say this hammer is, wood-handed hammer, blah, blah, weight, etc. It needs context and experience, which is the hardest thing. We have always considered the hardest problem in product information is not doing what we're doing today. That's a hard problem. The hardest problem is to say, I have a glass bottom boat and I need an adhesive to fix it. Give me the adhesive and I'll buy it. It's very difficult. Now, even with the current AI platforms, that's very difficult because I can give the AI platform, I'll show you some examples, attributes of a product, what the supplier says to me, product descriptions, all of that. I cannot give it context of human experience. Another way to think about it is, I don't know how many of you do it, I do it all the time. Something breaks down in your house, your dishwasher breaks down. I go to YouTube now. I punch in the model number and say, tell me how to fix it. That's contextual knowledge, right? That contextual knowledge, the current AI platforms that you're seeing are built on generic human information. They're not subject matter specialized. And that's where the second point comes in. Companies that can train the AI on contextual data will have an edge. And that's what we work very hard on, is putting in contextual data into our platform. Because without it, it stays very linear. So for today, I'm going to show you some examples, but we are on a journey. We have we're focusing on the first slide. If you remember, I said, all of these things are the lower hanging fruits. You can do these and save a whole bunch of time and money, right? I'll show you those examples. And then the next step, you get to, building in contextual models and then start doing hyper-personalization, which is where you start driving sales. So with that, I just got a 2-minute warning. Hopefully I can do this. Now there's an issue with these where they're going to go, actually it's running right now. Let me see if I can figure this out. So essentially the examples you will see, and I'll ask you to focus your eyes because somehow the way PowerPoint is working and we were testing it today, it's moving through really fast. But this is a pin screen, if you will, and the person working on it doesn't like the product title. And a typical time, it would take about 5 minutes to play around with different titles and decide on one. You click a button, AI suggests 4 different titles, you select one and you say we're done, right? So I have several examples referring to that thing we talked about is how do we save time and money, right? Let me see the conversation with AI if I can help. All right. Here. Unfortunately, I cannot get this to work on the screen for some reason. But let me show you another example if I can run. Okay, so this is going to run on its own, but essentially what it's doing is working on a SKU title. It went out. This is classic writers that are going out and looking for the best product title possible and then replacing the current one. User interaction is there, and I know I have 2 minutes. I do want to say one thing is, we could give you complete automation, right? We say, AI, go fix all my data. We choose not to do that. And that's something I would tell you, your organizations, at this point, it's really important to have governance. You've all heard about hallucinations. You cannot take AI result and put it into your databases at this point in time. You need human control and governance. So that's what we have built in. We see that going away over time, right? Obviously. Okay. Again, this is going to go really fast, but it's showing you multiple languages. You know, I want 3 different tonalities. I want a forward tone. I want a, easy tone. Create me a marketing description. It creates a marketing copy in an instant. You copy and paste it. You accumulate all the time of these different examples, and that's what gets you from 6 months to a few days of getting an PI on board. So this is an interesting classic problem. You just started a brand new category of business, or your current taxonomy or merchandising structure you're not happy with. You go in and you ask the software to give you the taxonomy structure that makes sense. And it will. It'll give you multiple options. You select the taxonomy that you like, the merchandising structure that you like, and it will replace it. And what it's doing now, and it's kind of hard to see, is it's now also telling you what attributes you should have for the taxonomy. All of these things that requires expertise and manual work, it's all built in, leveraging AI. And this is let me see which example is. So this is an example of, I got a whole bunch of supplier data. What do you do now? You have to either brute force it, you have 10 attributes, the supplier sent you 20 attributes, you have to match it all up, do all of that manual work. The technology does it for you. So I'm not making it sound like magic. It's about 75% there. It's not 100% there, but it's getting very close to saying, whoa, this changes everything I'm ever doing to this thing. So with that, I'm going to leave you. My whole take on this for us and for anybody else that you work with is move fast, have a bunch of governance, but build caution into the process. The last thing you can do is get overexcited and overinvest, or sit on the sidelines. Those are going to be very helpful. Yes.
I might have questions.
Okay.
And I think we have accepted.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So I'll be around. Thank you for being a great audience. Thank you.